Hello, my name is Rebecca Hankinson, and I'm going to be talking to you today about my research dissertation on the impact pole fitness has on body embodiment and resilience on individuals already engaging in pole fitness. So before we start, just a little bit about myself. I'm a counselling student from Bangor University, and this is me finishing my master's, so my final year project. I have a background in support work, specifically supporting individuals with their mental health. So that's been in hospital psychiatric wards and as well out in the community in residential settings. I have a specific interest in promoting positive relationships with our body, as I believe this is very impactful on our overall mental health. And I'm a pole fitness enthusiast. I have been engaged in pole fitness for the last 6 years, and I've seen myself how it has improved my own confidence and my own mental health through this time. So just a quick overview on what this presentation will entail. So I will quickly talk about the introduction and background research that supported this dissertation, and then what hypothesis I've drawn, the method, so how I collected the data and the participants, the results section, and then again the discussion being basically what we found and the conclusions that we drew, any further research and limitations, and then the practical implications and an overall conclusion. So to introduce this study, I firstly looked at body image dissatisfaction and the impact this was having on individuals. So body image dissatisfaction is correlated with adverse social experiences. So these experiences were things like perceived competencies at work or potential of finding a romantic partner going forwards, and having these experiences led to individuals experiencing a lot of anxiety, specifically around their awareness of body image. So individuals becoming fixated on how their body looks or how an audience perceives their body and the impact this has on their day-to-day. Research argues that there appears to be a relationship between the experience of body dissatisfaction and the prevalence of eating disorders. And this is quite a serious issue at the moment, and it's something that does need addressing within the counselling field. But in terms of protective factors, Las Hayes et al. Found that resilience was a protective factor against eating disorders, which was very, very helpful. So some of the problems at the moment, and the first problem that I found was that eating disorders have the highest mortality rate than any other mental health disorder. And this is specifically looking at anorexia nervosa, which is the most leading cause of death. And then the second problem is that the traditional treatments that are currently available for eating disorders can be effective. So the NICE guidelines would typically recommend cognitive behavioural therapy combined with family therapy to help combat eating disorders. But despite these being somewhat effective, they do come with high relapse rates. So long-term individuals are still struggling with eating disorders. And the third problem is that since COVID-19, there's actually been a huge increase of individuals diagnosed or at risk of developing eating disorders. So in the last few years, the population are struggling more with eating disorders and wanting to change how their body looks and doing this in a harmful way more than ever. So the background research for this study looked at one done by Piran and Cook-Cottone, and this was a study where yoga had been used as an activity to reduce the risk of development of eating disorders, as well as a treatment for individuals who already had a pre-existing clinical diagnosis. It was found that this research supported that it could be the role of body embodiment that yoga incorporates, which led to this kind of effective use as a treatment or preventive measure. Body embodiment is a model put forward by Piran, and it's a 5-dimensional model, and the 5 dimensions are desire, agency, body connection, self-attunement, and resistance to objectification. And Piran argued that each of these dimensions had both a positive and negative aspect. Another research study found that individuals who engage in pole fitness also had high levels of body embodiment in comparison to that as a pole group, so suggesting that maybe pole fitness has a positive impact on body embodiment as well. And then thirdly, another study by Kim et al. Found that pole fitness participants recorded they felt an increased sense of resilience from their engagement in the fitness class. Now, this was important for this study because the whole idea of resilience, being able to bounce back from adverse experiences, linked in quite closely to Piran's dimension of resistance of objectification, and that specifically was referred to as being able to reject society's notion of an ideal body, which linked highly into resilience. So it seems that body embodiment and resilience do go hand in hand. So this study had two hypotheses. The first one that we did was that individuals who engage in pole fitness will demonstrate high levels of embodiment. And then the second hypothesis was individuals who are in a high ability class will demonstrate higher levels of resilience and body embodiment than the lower level class. So, for example, beginner pole fitness students would have reports of lower resilience and body embodiment than, say, the individuals in the advanced group, which is what we were hoping to find. So the way that we kind of come about doing this was through the use of 66 participants. So 13 of them were excluded as they didn't answer all the questions, and all participants were currently attending pole classes with a qualified coach across North Wales and Chester, and they were all over the age of 18. So in terms of grouping these participants, they were grouped automatically depending on the class they were already enrolled in. So we had 18 beginners, 19 intermediate, 11 higher intermediate, and 5 advanced. So in terms of the measures that they were given, there was 3 quantitative questionnaires that we asked all of the participants to fill in. So we have the resilience evaluation scale, the experience of embodiment scale, and the traditional masculinity femininity scale. And then the study also gained approval from Bangor University School of Psychology and Sports Science Research Ethics and Governance Committee, and the study met all the guidelines needed by the BPS, BACP and the NCPS for ethical research and practice. So the way that we put this study in place was we advertised firstly through the pole studios themselves or through the social media accounts they had online. We did gain permission from the studio owners before any advertisement took place. Each advert had a link or a QR code which would let the participants to take part, so they could scan it or just click on the link and it would take them straight to the online study. Once the participant engaged with the advert, they were given further information such as consent forms, contact details to people involved with the experiment, and then also the right to withdraw were explained. After participants gained consent, they were able to automatically enroll into our study, complete the demographic details, and then the 3 questionnaires that we mentioned prior. And then after that was all finished, they were provided with a debrief form, reminded of their right to withdraw retrospectively so we could take their data back out if that's what they wanted, and then any other details to contact us if they needed were also there, as well as any details for additional support, so helplines and mental health services. In terms of the results, when we looked at the descriptive analysis, it did demonstrate a trend in data. So it appeared that the mean level of resilience reported did increase through the stages, but there was a decline in the advanced group. So it went up between beginners and intermediate, higher intermediate, but between higher intermediate and advanced there was a decline. And when we looked at this for the embodiment scale, we actually found exactly the same trend. So again, it increased as the class level did, but by the time participants entered the advanced group from the higher intermediate, there was again another decline. So in terms of meeting our hypothesis, we met them to a point as we did expect there to be an increase across the skill level, but we did not guess that there would be a decline in advanced, which is where this discussion will focus on, because that was an interesting finding that we wasn't expecting, so it was looking into why this might have happened. So in terms of resilience, in terms of that decline that we saw in the advanced class, Research kind of explains that it could be that self-perception is an influencer on impacting on bouncing back, and this was a study that looked at individuals who were performing at a high ability level, competitive level, potentially Olympic, found that with this extra training, stagnation was happening and more adverse experiences. So individuals weren't progressing as fast as they had previously, and they were sticking around the same ability level for longer. So it could be, in terms of our pole fitness participants, that there was additional stress due to the harder moves being incorporated into class. But as scheduling allows, there was no increase in training time to accommodate these harder moves. So it could take much longer for individuals to get the harder moves because they're having to restrict their training times, and then they're finding it harder to kind of bounce back from this. And when we gave the participants option to give a little feedback on their concerns, out of the 5 advanced participants we had, 3 of them did report they were concerned the moves would be too hard, or that their body wouldn't allow them to do it, or that they just couldn't because they wouldn't be strong enough. And then in terms of how we could use this going forwards, it could be that incorporated interventions such as mindfulness or acceptance can actually help build resilience in sport professionals and make them aware that stagnation will happen. It might slow progress, they might struggle more, they might fail more because the nature of the sport's a bit harder. But letting them know that that's part of the journey and that's a normal experience to go through, which might not predominantly be made quite obvious in the training sessions at the moment in pole. Moving on to the findings for embodiment, again we found the same trend in data with that decline in the advanced class, and research found that for this, that engaging in dancing activities have been associated with an increased sense of body embodiment. So engaging in pole fitness through the beginner, intermediate, high intermediate groups was associated with this increase in body embodiment. And research argued in the past that this could be due to the sexual nature of pole fitness. For example, a study found that belly dancing participants actually reported higher levels of body embodiment than non-belly dancers, and this was linked into Piran's desire dimension out of the 5. But when this was looked into further, participants didn't report that they enjoyed the significant aspect of sexualization, and it was just the engagement and the enjoyment that they got from the dancing overall. And another study found that street dance and modern dance also have positive impacts, which again are not sexual in nature, indicating that there is some form of engagement within the other dimensions of Piran's body embodiment model other than desire, which is why we linked into resilience. And what was interesting was Downs et al. Looked at a population of exotic dancers, and they actually reported lower levels of body embodiment than non-dancers, which counteracts the argument previously made. Now, looking into this further, it appears to be a shift in the perspective of why individuals are engaging in dancing in the first place. So it could be that individuals engaging in the pole fitness classes are doing it recreational, they're doing it for fun, enjoyment, they're doing it as a sport, or the community aspect, and it's more internalized, whereas, for example, the exotic dancers are performing to an audience. They're looking at people, how they might perceive their body, whether they're doing a good job for the audience. It's a professional nature and it's their job that they're being paid for. So a lot more pressure is put onto the dancing. They can't simply just enjoy it because this is professional now. Linking this into pole fitness participants, it could be that the advanced polers are the individuals engaging in competitions, in showcases, performances, and this shift of perspective might actually come through in those participants as well, kind of indicating why there could be a decline in the advanced in terms of their embodiment. So the limitations of this study, there was 2 that I would quickly like to mention. So we had quite unbalanced groups in ours, as you would have seen in the methodology section. So we had significantly more participants in the beginner and intermediate classes than we did in the advanced. And the consequences of this was that it impacted on the statistical analysis that we could run. And the data that we collected, we cannot draw any level of significance, we can only draw assumptions. However, I do believe that the data we did provide is a strong foundation for something going forwards. Another limitation was we was not present at the pole studios, so we do not know the coaching styles that these teachers had. So it could be that one studio already adopts a more mindful and accepting approach to pole fitness as opposed to another one, and this was not something that we controlled for, and it could have influenced on the data. In terms of further study in this field, I believe it would be really interesting to conduct interviews with participants, collect more qualitative data, potentially ask how their pole journey's been, whether they can reflect themselves on the positive benefits, or for advanced students, whether they've actually experienced a decline compared to how it used to be for them, and kind of discussing that with them. Again, comparing the outcome of resilience and body embodiment between different coaching styles of the pole teachers would be interesting as well, to see whether the introduction of mindfulness-based stress reduction in a pole studio could be more beneficial than the traditional service that's already been offered, and having that as a comparison level between the two. So to conclude, in terms of the field of counselling, I believe that this presentation gives a good indication that pole fitness could actually be really beneficial going forwards, working on building resilience and body embodiment in the people who engage in this. And I believe that the data that we collected could be enhanced through the incorporation of mindfulness interventions or tailoring classes specifically for individuals who have been identified as at risk or already do have a clinical diagnosis of an eating disorder, and help build that positive bodily relationship again through the introduction of mindfulness and acceptance, whilst engaging in dance, which already helps build that body embodiment and resilience that's going on. I would like to thank you for watching this presentation and going through the whole thing with me. It's been fantastic. It's been a beautiful opportunity to explore something that I'm really passionate about and something that I've really enjoyed studying, and again, something that the counselling field could expand to in the future to provide help with others and build those positive bodily relationships. So the next few slides just have my references on, so you're welcome to have a look at those as well.